It was late in the cold month of January, in the year 2015, when the quiet streets of Salt Lake City seemed to hold something more than still air, something more than the sound of wind brushing against walls. For on the 25th day of that month, a user on the online forum known as Reddit, going by the strange name Disco Godfather 6922, made a post that would stir restless whispers across the digital void. The post itself seemed harmless, an image captured from across the street of a building painted in an unnatural bright green shade. The building bore old weathered signs that read "Fun Time Kids Care," and though the name suggested a daycare, there was no laughter, no music, no running children to be found. The title of the post was plain, yet loaded with unease. It read, "What's the deal with this place? Lived across the street from it for 5 years. Never seen a kid there." At first glance, it could have been nothing more than a relic of a business that had died. But the longer people stared at the picture, the more wrong it began to feel. The paint, it looked too fresh, the signs too worn, the windows too strange and high and covered, as though hiding something within. Those who saw the post felt a subtle coldness in their bones that they could not explain. And the post began to spread until the green building became an obsession. Just days later, the same user returned with a story. They claimed they had gone to the building in the daylight to look closer, and at the back of the property they saw something covered with a camouflage tarp. Before they could approach, a man emerged, took something from the tarp, and vanished back inside. Earlier that day, the user had seen a pizza delivery driver knock on the front door with no answer. The driver left, but moments later, the witness saw children walk up to the same door and knock, until at last, an older woman opened it and ushered them inside. 5 years they had lived across the street, 5 years of silence, and then in one day, 4 people entering as though a switch had been flipped. The internet began to wonder what was really happening inside the green walls. Some said it was nothing more than a money laundering front. Others went darker, imagining organ trafficking or other horrors, and one person suggested the sudden appearance of children was merely a cover to calm suspicions. Now that attention had been drawn, the whispers grew until a figure appeared in the conversation. A user named Deathship. They told Disco Godfather to stop looking into it, stop asking questions for their own safety. It seemed like a threat, and when others looked into this user, they found that Deathship claimed to be a retired Air Force linguist fluent in 8 languages, and that at some point, they had been stationed at Area 51. If true, it meant they might have known things better left unsaid, and perhaps that the green building was connected to powerful forces. Soon after, Disco Godfather began receiving direct threats from strangers. Delete your post and comments. Stop making questions first and last. Warning: we know who you are, they wrote. If you must continue your search, do not say I did not warn you. Dangerous people run things like this. And the tension turned into outright fear. Digging deeper, some claimed the daycare had ties to an imported shipping container from China. The manifest claimed it contained over 1,000 kilograms of plastic jewelry and nearly 7,000 kilograms of soccer balls. Yet the numbers made no sense. The weight far too heavy for such objects. The theory of human trafficking gained momentum, but then, quietly, the truth emerged. It was all a misunderstanding. Records from the Utah Department of Health confirmed the building was a licensed daycare. Its strange nature explained by its purpose. It served as a safe haven for children who needed protection from certain family members. The windows were covered to keep those outside from looking in, and the small number of children was by design. In fact, it had existed since 1973 and was once lively until it was purchased by a man named Richard Yoakum in 2006. His management faltered, complaints piled up of poor supervision, of yelling, of unsanitary conditions. The business declined until he handed it to his elderly mother to keep her busy. The online threats from Deathship and others were trolls feeding the fire. Richard passed away in 2023, The building still stands bright and strange, the story of its conspiracy, nothing more than an odd footnote, yet its image still stirs something cold in those who remember. But internet mysteries are like roots, underground. One fades and another grows in its place, and in January 2018, another thread began. This time, not about a building, but about a sound a Redditor with the name Bachan320 posted in the Beaverton, Oregon forum, telling others to tune their radios to 96.7 if they were near Progress Ridge. They said something strange was happening. The airwaves were alive, with a sound, not quite music, not quite voice. Strange bass tones shifting in and out random phrases, breaking through like murmurs from another place. At first, people assumed it was nothing more than two radio signals crossing, but when they listened closer, they realized it was more unsettling. The signal would change sometimes. White noise, sometimes the whir of what sounded like a massive fan. Sometimes historic speeches from Martin Luther King, John F. Kennedy, and even the Apollo 11 broadcasts, the voices emerging from static like ghosts speaking from the edge of time. The transmissions had been happening for months, perhaps longer. There were posts as far back as 2017. One, from a now deleted account, wondered if it was a number station, the kind used in espionage. They recorded the sounds and played them for others. Hours of tones and hums and unrecognizable fragments of speech. Yet, the station 96.7 was not listed officially. Eventually, someone caught a warped call sign within the noise, KZRYLP. Records revealed it belonged to a nonprofit called the Community Alliance of Tenants, an advocacy group that spoke about renters' rights. But when contacted, the group denied any knowledge of the sounds. It left one chilling possibility that they themselves had broadcast them, deliberately to draw attention, perhaps to lure curious minds to their otherwise ordinary station. And for over a year the noises persisted before they stopped without explanation, leaving only the recordings behind. Years before this, in the May of 2016, another strange post appeared on Reddit from a user named Sparta213. They asked for help finding a game like the wholesome farming title Harvest Moon, but with a dark twist. They described a game where you kill your wife in the first scene and then spend the rest of the time farming and hiding her body from the police. The concept horrified and intrigued readers, sparking a search that grew into its own community for years. People claimed to have played it, recalling how you would have to move the corpse around to avoid discovery, yet no proof surfaced until the answer came, and it was almost laughable. The game had never existed. It was only a misremembered clip from a video by Vinisauce, a joke about Harvest Moon turned into a murder simulator by imagination. But by then, the myth had taken on its own life. In July 2013, a real game did spark a darker tale. Kanye Quest 3030. It began as a parody role-playing game filled with rappers, but hidden within was a secret path. A word typed at the right moment led to an entirely different experience. One that spoke of ascension, of participation, and of giving your personal information for some unknown purpose. The repeated references to Ascensionism, a real-world cult, seeded the idea that this was more than a joke for years. People speculated about the developer, about the possibility of recruitment, until finally the truth came out. It had been nothing more than a high school project with a hidden puzzle. The data you entered never went anywhere. The danger only existed in the minds of those who wanted to believe. Yet for a decade, the legend remained. And then there was Yay video games in September 2010. They appeared in a discussion about mods for the game Oblivion and began to post in a way that made no sense. Their words became fragmented. Phrases repeated again and again with strange formatting. They posted thousands of times linked to unsettling images until they vanished their account. Deleted for years, people thought it was an elaborate joke or perhaps an alternate reality game, but the truth was darker. An investigation connected the post to a man battling severe chronic illness, constant pain and mental strain. His bizarre spamming was his way of coping, and in the year 2015, unable to endure further, he ended his own life, leaving only fragments of his final strange expressions scattered across the digital void. The internet forgets quickly, but somewhere these stories remain like bones buried shallow in loose earth. A bright green building on a silent street, a radio humming with voices of the dead, a farming game that never existed, a parody game that became a cult in rumor, a man lost inside his own unraveling mind, all of them waiting for the next curious soul to dig too deep and feel that same cold weight in their chest.